Hello and welcome to part 19 in my Japanese for Beginners series. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to understand how to use the particles to and ya. This lesson corresponds with pages 113 and 256 of the Genki textbook, but don't worry, you do not need that textbook to follow along.
では始めましょう。
Particle to has a few uses, and we're going to cover 3 of them in this lesson. The first use is very simple and very straightforward. It just means and you use to as a way to connect one noun to another noun. So noun to noun is just noun and noun. So some examples of that in action are pizza to biiru, neko to inu, and anata to watashi. If you've been following the series so far, you should know what all of these vocabulary words are by now, but you know, the translations are up on the screen anyway. But yeah, very straightforward. Pizza and beer, cats and dogs, you and me. With this in mind, you can use a noun 1 to noun 2 compound. Think of that whole thing in brackets. And you can use that in place of any single just noun in any of our sentence formulas that we have worked with so far in the series. So I'll give you some examples. One of our first sentences we learned in the series actually was Sora wa aoi desu, the sky is blue. But you could say Sora to umi wa aoi desu, the sky and the sea are blue. 私の趣味はバレエと読書です. My hobbies are ballet and reading. 僕とマリーは映画館に行きました. So now this is a more complicated sentence. 僕とマリー, in this case, is replacing our noun, our X. Our noun does a verb at a location is our basic sentence structure that we're doing here. But instead of just one plain noun, like instead of just 僕は映画館に行きました, I went to the movie theater, 僕とマリーはMarie and I went to the movie theaters. So the second use of particle to is with. And this is usually if you're going to be doing an action, so it's with verbs. So the basic formula of this is noun to verb. And that means you're doing the verb with the noun. So here is pretty much the same sentence that I just gave you guys earlier, but it's just reworked a little bit, and as you'll see in the translation, the nuance is different. 僕はマリーと映画館に行きました. This is, I went to the movie theater with Marie. So basically, putting the original sentence up there that I'm riffing on, basically the only difference is I swapped the placement of particles wa and to. So the first sentence is, Marie and I went to the movie theater, whereas the second sentence is, I went to the movie theater with Marie. So it's really the same meaning, it's just the nuance is slightly different. Here are just some phrases. 家族と食べる, eat with my family. 彼氏とキスする, that's make out with my boyfriend. So kiss, even though you might think that just means kiss, it kind of means more along the lines of intense romantic kissing, making out. It doesn't have to, but kisu suru, it's not quite the same as just kissing. It's a little more specific than our general term kissing. So 彼氏とキスする, make out with my boyfriend. 犬と遊ぶ, play with a dog, my dog, the dog. So if you ever really want to note with whom you're doing an activity, then to is very useful. And the third use of particle to, it's not actually covered in the Genki textbook, but I decided to throw it in because I think it's useful and it's really easy to understand. It's for when you're quoting somebody. So this can be applied, this principle can be applied in a variety of ways. I'm only going to look at pure quoting of people or basically putting the word that comes before particle to in air quotes. So here's a basic formula. X wa y to you or imas if you're being polite. That means X says Y. And then X wa Y to itta or imashita if you're being polite is X said Y. And notice how the Y is in quotes. And you'll find the structure a lot in any narrative. I run into it a lot in the games that I translate. You'll find it a lot in novels for the most part. So here are some examples of actual sentences. 彼は明日テストがあると言いました. He said, comma, quotes, there's a test tomorrow, period, end quotes. So note that also the Japanese version of quotation marks, it's not the same as ours. They sometimes use our quotes as well, but their system, it looks kind of like brackets, but as you'll see, one of them is sort of like a right angle one way and the other is a right angle the other way. Kind of, if you put them together, they make a square, but if you keep them apart, they don't. Sort of. They're like a rectangle than a square. But yeah, 彼は, he, as for him, and then here's his quote, 明日テストがある, there's a test tomorrow, and then you add the と after that to note that the thing that came just before the と is the quote, the thing that you're quoting, and then いました, past tense, said. Here's another one, and I'm not using the quotes in this one because you don't always have to. In the first example, I started with something that was not in the quotes, 彼は, and then the quoted statement, and then the said part. So I used quotes there, but in this case, the first half of this thing is the quote that somebody said, and then the second half of it is the narration. So, 私は先生ですよ, と彼女は叫んだ. I assure you, I'm a teacher, she screamed. So it doesn't have to be you or ita or imas or imasta. It could be any, just like, when you took creative writing classes in elementary school, you were probably taught, you shouldn't always say said. You should be like exclaimed, declared, cried, screamed, implored. Same thing with Japanese. So any verb like sakebu or sakebimasu is to scream. So sakenda is the plain past tense of that. 笑った like 私は先生ですよ と彼女は笑った that would be like I assure you I'm a teacher she laughed. So you can apply and play with some different emotionality if you use verbs other than said or say. Here is a very useful model phrase which you should just memorize because it's extremely useful. X は日本語で何と言いますか? So X is basically the thing that you're asking, what is this thing? What's X called in Japanese? So like, it's useful if you're hanging out with somebody who, does understand English words. Like most Japanese people understand a lot of English words, like in isolation. So this was actually one of our model sentences. One of the first things I learned in Japanese 1 in high school. Book wa nihongo de nan to iimasu ka? What is book in Japanese? It's just a very useful phrase to be able to ask. You could be like, これは Nihongo de nan to iimasu ka? Like, what is this thing that I'm holding in Japanese? Like, let's say you don't know what apple is in Japanese, and you pick up an apple, and you say, これはNihongo de nan to iimasu ka? Or you could just say, これは何と言いますか? Like, what is this called? What do you say in regards to this thing? You can also say, if you want to be more casual, これは何て呼ぶの? Like, what is this called? Yobu is to call something. So useful phrases, just memorize those, lock those down, because then you can ask what things are in Japanese and then you won't have to look them up. So now that we have looked at particle to, we're going to look at particle ya. Ya is a lot simpler. It really only has one use that we're going to look at. And it basically means and, but it means and if you're going to be, you're implying that what you're saying is an incomplete part of a list. So I'll give you some examples to illustrate what I mean by that. So if you say X to Y, it's X and Y, and that's pretty much all we're talking about, X and Y. If you say X ya Y, you're saying X and Y, among other things, or X, comma, Y, comma, etc. So in action, here's an example sentence. 私は猫や犬があんまり好きじゃないです. So that means I'm not really a fan of dogs and cats and the like and things like that, etc. If I said 私は猫と犬があまり好きじゃないです, I'm specifically saying I don't really like cats and dogs. And those are like the only two things that I don't really like. Here's another example. 日本でスカートやドレスを買いました. So that means I bought skirts, dresses, etc. in Japan. If it were skato to doresu, it'd be like, when I was in Japan, I bought exactly skirts and dresses and nothing else. That's like all that I bought. But, I bought skirts, I bought dresses, maybe I also bought some shoes. And it's like I'm implying there might be some other things in that category that I bought in addition to skirts and dresses. I bought some things like skirts and dresses in Japan. 少女アニメをよく見ます。Card Captor Sakura やプリキュアは特に好きです. So that means like I often watch shoujo anime. That's the first part, the first sentence. And then I'm saying, well, Card Captor Sakura and Pretty Cure, I especially like anime like Card Captor Sakura, Pretty Cure, etc. That's what that ya implies. And as you can see here, I don't know how familiar you guys are with shoujo anime, but like Card Captor Sakura and Pretty Cure, they're kind of in a similar vein. Like shoujo manga is a pretty big umbrella, but I listed two like mahou shoujo, like two magical girl series, like Card Captor Sakura, Pretty Cure. Cute little girls transforming into characters, and it's a cutesy, frilly sort of aesthetic. So it's like, I like that kind of shoujo anime. I'm getting more specific in part two of this sentence. Incidentally, that's not true. I do like magical girl shoujo anime, but I'm not a huge fan of Pretty Cure or Card Captor Sakura. I've seen them both a little bit here and there, but I'm not like the hugest fan. They're okay. So here are a few more sentences, just bringing everything home. 明日のパーティーにひろみちゃんやえりちゃんを誘います。So, 明日のパーティー, tomorrow's party, に, to. So, に, again, it's that particle that implies like a motion, a goal of movement towards something. But in this case, this uses of particle ni is slightly differently nuanced than that one that I taught you guys a few videos ago. So hey, I'm kind of dropping a new usage of particle ni here. But it's very similar to the like gakko ni ikimasu, like you're expressing the goal of movement and going to school. So, 明日のパーティーに to tomorrow's party. Hiromi-chan ya Eri-chan, so that's one thought together. So Hiromi-chan, Eri-chan, and other people like Hiromi-chan and Eri-chan. Maybe they're from the specific friend group of yours. Maybe they're all on the soccer team together. Hiromi-chan ya Eri-chan wo sasuimasu. Sasuimasu is to invite. So to tomorrow's birthday, not birthday, just party, to tomorrow's party, I'm going to invite people like Hiromi and Eri. このケーキはお母さんとお父さんのためのプレゼントですよ。So, このケーキ, that's our X in this sentence. This cake は、お母さんとお父さん, so that's another compound there. Mom and dad. So, just mom and dad. We're not like お父さんやお母さん would be more like my mom, my dad, maybe also my sister, maybe also my brother, maybe also my grandparents. But this is と, so it's just my mom and dad. お母さんとお父さんのため. So, ため is like for the sake of. So, お父さんとお母さんとお父さんのため means like for mom and dad. And then another no after that. Yes, I'm sadistic. I'm just stringing a bunch of nouns together with no's. So, the no in this case, put the whole thought お母さんとお父さんのため. So, for mom and dad, apostrophe s, possessive, present. So, a present for mom and dad's sake. ですよ. So I assure you, or I declare, so saith I. Maybe you were about to like stick your finger in the cake and eat it, and I'm like, このケーキはお母さんとお父さんのためのプレゼントですよ. It's like, hey, this cake is for a present for mom and dad. Hands off. 僕と一緒に歌いませんか? 僕 is like that softer masculine version of I. So this is, we're using と as with, not and in this case, because we're having a verb at the end of this. So 僕と 歌いませんか would be, wouldn't you like, would you like to sing with me? And then the 一緒に added in there means together. So would you like to sing with me together? You could also just say 一緒に歌いませんか? And that's like, would you like to sing with me? But it could also mean, would you like to sing with the group? Would you like to sing with us? But if it's like, 私と一緒に歌いませんか? Like me specifically, would you like to sing with me? ひろしくんとのデートは和食亭で寿司や天ぷらを食べました. Very long sentence. So, ひろしくんとのデート. We're getting so complicated here and I love it. But believe it or not, these are grammar rules that I have taught you. So, ひろしくんと, so this is with ひろし, のデート. So the date of with Hiroshi. So the date with Hiroshi. Wa, so as for the date with Hiroshi, Washokute is like a Japanese restaurant. De, so that's going to be our location at the Japanese restaurant. Sushi ya tempura. So this is another thought. Sushi ya tempura. Sushi, comma, tempura, comma, etc. Foods like sushi and tempura. を食べました。So we ate foods like sushi and tempura at a Japanese restaurant on our date. Hiroshi and I. 昔は学校で年下の友達のマヤやリリーとよく遊びました。Again, this might also look really long and intimidating, but it is all grammar rules that I have taught you. So 昔は, that means long ago, in the past. 学校で, so again, this de is showing our location, so at school, long ago at school. 年下の友達. So 年下 means, it literally means year beneath. And it basically just means somebody who is younger than the speaker, so me in this case. 年下の, so this 年下 is sort of like an adjective for the next noun that's going to come after it. It's describing the next noun that comes after it. And the next noun is tomodachi. So 年下の友達 is friends who are younger than I, the speaker. No, so again, this 年下の友達, this friends younger than I, is now becoming the not the modifier, the like descriptive term for the nouns that come right after that. So the nouns that come right after that are Maya ya Lily. So Maya and Lily and others like them. So friends younger than me, Maya and Lily and others like them. To, so all of that is with. So with my younger friends, Maya, Lily, etc., asobimashita, played. So in the past, mukashi wa, I often, that's the yoku asobimashita, I often used to play at school with my younger friends like Lily and Maya. This is true. A lot of my friends were younger than me. My social development was a lot slower than my mental development. 彼はShigeruやKenjiと一緒に遊ばないよと言いました. So this is another one of those he said, blah, 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 said. So 彼は he, Shigeru ya Kenji. So people like Shigeru and Kenji, people in that clique. To, so with, people like Shigeru and Kenji, to 一緒に遊ばないよ. So 一緒に遊ばない means not play with together. And then the yo is that like defiant, like exclamation point. So saith I. So if you're isolating the thing that the quote that this dude is saying, I will not play with people like Shigeru and Kenji. To imashita. So he said. He said, I'm not playing with guys like Shigeru and Kenji. And now we have reached the review section of this lesson. Our example sentences, in case you haven't noticed, they are getting longer and longer and more complicated. So as always, as I've been doing with the last several videos, I will include timestamps. And these timestamps are both in the video description and in a pinned comment at the top of the comment section. And the sentences are all written out next to the timestamp. So all you have to do is click on the timestamp of the sentence that you want to practice, and then you listen to me saying the sentence, hit pause. There's a few blank seconds of space like after I say the sentence, but hit pause right after I say the sentence anyway. And then you can click on the timestamp again if you just want to hear it again and just keep jumping back to that spot. Or while it's paused, you can practice saying it. Definitely practice saying these sentences. That's the point of this. Find a quiet space by yourself and practice, 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 because this is the part that most language learners neglect. Pizza to biiru. 猫と犬。あなたと私。空と海は青いです。私の趣味はバレエと読書です。僕とマリーは映画館に行きました。僕はマリーと映画館に行きました。家族と食べる。彼氏とキスする。犬と遊ぶ。彼は明日テストがあると言いました。私は先生ですよ と彼女は叫んだ。X は日本語で何と言いますか？これは何と呼ぶの？私は猫や犬があんまり好きじゃないです。日本でスカートやドレスを買いました。少女アニメをよく見ます。カードキャプターさくらやプリキュアは特に好きです。明日のパーティーにひろみちゃんやえりちゃんを誘います。このケーキはお母さんとお父さんのためのプレゼントですよ。僕と一緒に歌いませんか？ひろしくんとのデートは和食亭で寿司や天ぷらを食べました。昔は学校で年下の友達のマヤやリリーとよく遊びました。彼はシゲルやケンジと一緒に遊ばないよと言いました。Thanks for watching! In the next lesson, we are going to learn about e adjectives and na adjectives and how to conjugate them. Thank you to all of the patrons who support this series and all the other series on this channel. If you want to get something a little more at the intermediate level, go ahead and check out my Learn Japanese by Singing and Sailor Moon playlists. They're above my head. And I'll see you in the next lesson. Mata ne!